This episode of The Biggest Table is brought to you in part by Wild Goose Coffee. Since 2008, Wild Goose has sought to build better communities through coffee. For our listeners, Wild Goose is offering a special promotion of 20% off a one-time order using the code TABLE at checkout. To learn more and to order coffee, please visit wildgoosecoffee.com. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Hugh Hollowell. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Biggest Table. I am your host, Andrew Camp, and in this podcast, we explore the table, food, eating, and hospitality as an arena for experiencing God's love and our love for one another. And today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Hugh Hollowell. Hugh is a sixth-generation Mississippian and is the pastor of Open Door Mennonite Church in Jackson, Mississippi, a multiracial peace church formed in the aftermath of the civil rights movement. He is a writer and storyteller and has been the publisher of a weekly newsletter called Life is So Beautiful for more than a decade. Before becoming pastor at Open Door, Hugh spent 12 years working as a pastor among unhoused and those struggling with addictions. This taught him much of what he knows about both second chances and grace, but not much that is useful at denominational meetings. He and his spouse Renee live in the Foundrin neighborhood of Jackson, where they run a small-scale kitten rescue and co-parent 5 house cats and 7 chickens. So thanks for joining me today, Hugh.
Really so glad to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to this conversation. Just even as I was reading my introduction again, I really want to explore how food connects us to God's love and our love for one another. And you have published a book of memoir essays, remembrances called Food is Love.
Yes.
And so as a pastor, what prompted you to write sort of this collection of essays about food?
You're honestly the first person who's asked about the connection between my being a pastor and, because it's an ostensibly secular book, right?
Right.
I write it from my perspective. So, and I'm in the South where even the atheists are Christians. So, I quote, one of my epigraphs is from Ecclesiastes, but as a Christian, the thing, and this gets me in trouble in some Christian spaces, is that as a Christian pastor, to me, the most compelling story in the Christian tradition for me, most people will say the resurrection or the virgin birth. And for me, honestly, it's the Last Supper. It's this idea that on this night when Jesus is afraid, when Jesus feels very lonely, when Jesus feels isolated, and later that night he's going to beg God for this to happen any other way. On that night, Jesus says, I'm going to have supper with my friends. Right?
Yeah.
This idea that that food is where we reach for solace. It's where we reach for connection.
Yeah.
No one on a first date says, let's cut the grass together. Right?
Right. Yeah.
We eating, someone told me one time that eating was the most intimate thing we could do with another person while keeping all our clothes on. It's this very human connective experience. And that Jesus on that night chose the meal as the place where he's going to share his last goodbyes, his charge to his disciples, and is going to ask them not only to eat this meal and to share this meal with him, but in the future to remember this meal.
Yeah.
I love that. And I see that playing out in the way most of us engage in food. So I'm from the Deep South. And in the 1920s, for reasons that are obvious, a lot of Black Southerners moved.
Mm-hmm.
They call it the Great Migration. And the northern cities, New York, Pennsylvania, and in Pennsylvania, Chicago, LA, there was this Detroit, there was this massive migration northward. And these people got there, and they only had what they could carry. And they got there, And yes, living conditions were better, but the people there didn't look like them, and they didn't sound like them, and they didn't eat food like they did. Um, a friend of mine who moved from Mississippi to Kansas said that up there you have to bring your own bottle of hot sauce because they think mayonnaise is spicy. The the point is that they got there and nothing was there that connected them to home. And so, but they could they could fry a chicken. And when they ate that fried chicken, it wasn't just, oh, this is good. This reminds us of the chicken we ate back home. This reminds us of the chicken that my grandmother fixed when I was sick. This reminds me of the chicken that we ate when I graduated high school and grandpa threw a party. And so food is so connected to memory that even Jesus mentions it and brings it into the story. And many churches around the world, every Sunday, we reenact this meal. It was so foundational to our faith. So yeah, that was a lot. Sorry.
Don't be sorry, because you're talking to a former pastor who loves food and thinks that maybe the table might be more formative than a sermon.
Absolutely.
And what's also important, is that when Jesus shared that meal, is he's sharing it with his friends, but friends who are about to desert him and leave him hanging, literally, like.
Right. Yeah. I mean, sometimes our friends don't live up to our expectations of them.
Right.
And sometimes we believe in their capacity far more than they believe in their ability to live up to the expectations that we have for them. Sometimes our friends let us down. Sarah Miles, I don't know if you know her work.
I know her name. I'm not familiar with her work.
So she Eat This Bread, I think is the name of her best known book. But she talks a lot about communion as a meal. And she says, based on if we use the Last Supper as the prototype for communion, it's not a valid communion unless someone scandalous is at the table.
Right.
And I just love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, we too often, I was raised in the evangelical white church, where maybe we celebrated communion once a month.
Right.
But it was always
whether you need it or not.
Yeah, but it was a somber thing of, we took Paul's words from 1 Corinthians 11 and misapplied them, I believe, now looking back at it, where you have to examine yourself and make sure you are worthy to participate,
Right.
And so it's this somber thing of like, oh, can I go if I'm not, haven't confessed all my sins and find myself needy at the table? I got to come cleaned up, ready to, perform for Jesus.
Yeah.
Where, Jesus, like you quoted from Sarah, like, it's a scandalous table. It's a table for the down and out. It's the table for the people who are literally going to sell Jesus for 30 shekels of silver.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. No, I love that story. And it's my foundational Christian story, right?
Yeah.
You could take away everything else, but I'm going to hold on to that one.
Well, and it's also fascinating, is that, when Jesus or even God asks his people, starting with Israelites, to remember him and remember salvation, it's always with a meal. Like,
absolutely. Well, I mean, even the manna in the desert, right?
Right.
Well, and again, I think that speaks to the humanity of it all. There are people I deeply loved that are gone now. And every memory I have of them involves food in some way.
Yeah.
Food and memory are just so severely intertwined that one of the things I love is that Christianity and Judaism before that attached so much importance to food as almost a mnemonic device, right?
Yeah.
So that we remember who we are and we remember these stories.
Yeah.
In the Seder, how is tonight unlike every other night? I mean, the Seder is a meal.
Yeah.
It's all intertwined. I love it.
No, I've been listening to David Graeber's book, Debt. A few people have recommended it, but what's fascinating is I was driving back from dropping my kids off at a camp this morning, and he's telling the story of, the intimacy of food in
Mm-hmm.
relation to debt, but he's, telling the story of, it's like an Islamic folklore where this, guy's in this house stealing another man's possessions and dips his hand in what he thinks is sugar, but it's salt, and he licks it. And in Islamic culture, if you share salt in somebody else's home, you're now friends and you can't betray that person. So this thief puts back all of the stuff and leaves because he has now shared salt with this person. Yeah, like and so it's Islam has this beautiful hospitality, baked into it as well, of like, okay, when we eat with somebody, like you said, it's the most intimate thing we can do with another human being with our clothes on.
Yeah.
I think it just speaks to what the power of the table, and especially in an age where we are so fractured and want to shun people left and right.
Yeah.
For one word they use.
Right.
The table might beckon us into something more beautiful.
I really do believe that I believe in the power of a meal to heal what is broken in us. So about 10 days ago, I actually had a book signing for the book that I wrote, and it was held in the next town over. And so I am a Mennonite pastor. Mennonites are known for our historic peace witness. We believe in a non-coercive, non-violent God, and we are to emulate God, so we seek to be non-violent, non-coercive as well. And so, and at the meeting, at the book signing, also in attendance, just like in the audience, was one of our senators, U.S. senators, and Roger Wicker. And Roger Wicker he's the Mississippi U.S. Senator, but he's also the chairman of the Armed Forces Committee.
Wow.
Right, for the whole U.S. And so basically he protects and funds, or is in charge of protecting and funding our entire war machine.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure he's everyone I know that knows him personally says he's one-on-one a really nice person, but he and I have very different views about the world, and he too claims to be Christian. I don't mean that pejoratively. Like, he says he's Christian. I believe him.
Right.
And so he too is a Christian, and yet we have these very opposing views on this very central issue. And we talked for 45 minutes after the thing, but not about war, and not about our Christianity, and not about our views, but about sweet potatoes and the ways our grandmothers cooked them, and the recipe, and which variety was the best. It was the best, one of the best conversations I've had in ages with someone that, at least as far as social media is concerned, we're almost enemies.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved it.
So sweet potatoes. What is it about sweet potatoes in the South that is like?
Yeah, they grow easy here.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Regular potatoes, white potatoes and red potatoes, are cool weather crops. They grew in they originally are in the mountains of the Andes.
Yeah.
Whereas sweet potatoes came from Africa.
Yeah.
And came over with enslaved people. And so they thrive on our heat and our humidity, and they grow, and they will keep forever. White potatoes here like melt and become almost mushy quickly.
Okay. Yeah.
But sweet potatoes, you can keep them all through the winter, and it will keep you from starving.
Yeah.
And so people will turn them into pies, and they turn them into side dishes. And I love just putting one in the microwave for 6 minutes until it's soft and mushy, and then I'll just eat it like an apple. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They are deep in our culture here, and have been for a couple of hundred years.
So with your conversation with the senator, what is the best way to prepare a sweet potato, say for the microwave, but
Yeah. No, well, we both agreed that we like we like sweet potato pie much better than pumpkin pie.
Okay.
They often are used interchangeably,
Yeah.
right? Because they have similar texture and color, but
Right.
we are both team pumpkin pie. A sweet potato pie, and we both agree that our favorite variety of a sweet potato is Beauregard.
Okay.
It's the variety that is grown. It
Yeah.
grows really well here, and
Okay.
almost every garden grows it. They have fancy ones, right?
Right.
But Beauregard's kind of the staple that our grandparents grew.
Hmm.
And we both agree that salt, pepper, and butter is a great accompaniment.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was this long, winding conversation, where we found out that we have many things in common, other than how we feel about a particular issue.
Yeah.
But the world today wants to compress everything down to individual issues,
Yep.
right? And again, I don't think that because he met a Mennonite pastor, he's changing his views on the armed forces. And I definitely am not going to suddenly promote warfare. But it was pleasant. It was lovely. In fact, the conversation was.
Right. And while neither of you are going to change your positions, you might be able to then have more sympathy and love and understanding for that person.
Absolutely.
Where they're no longer an abstract. They're fleshly. Right. They're human.
So I've got a cousin. I'm not going to name him. But I've got a cousin, and he is about a year younger than I am. I'm 54. He's 52, 53. And he has never been on an airplane in his life. Okay. He's probably never been more than 300 miles from home.
Wow.
On this very rural part of Mississippi where we grew up. And it occurred to me one day, and he was posting something on social media about Islam that was not kind to Islam, right? And it occurred to me that if you asked me, if I were pressed, I could easily name 20 Muslims, right?
Yeah.
That I have eaten at their tables. I've played with their children. And so for me, they're not an abstraction, right? They're Savannah and London and Akolo and Abdul, like they're people.
Yeah.
And for him, they're as strange as, like characters on Avatar. They're as abstract as that. And so of course I'm going to see the world differently than he does. And so when we get opportunities to eat with other people, we can see them as fully formed people instead of as cartoon abstractions.
Yeah. Was it somebody on the podcast recently said, it boggles his mind that we can, love the food of immigrants, but hate them, and that, we'll all search out the best taco stand and then, demonize the immigrants.
Right. And put those taco stands, and then open fusion taco stands in neighborhoods that the immigrants aren't welcome in or can't afford.
Right.
And we profit and appropriate their culture. Yeah. No, absolutely.
But like you said, your book is maybe not Christian in a formal sense, but it's a book that, calls us to remember, though, which is huge. Yeah. And so it's remembering the food that formed us. And so what, in most of the food literature, it is calling us to sometimes what feels like to me a very esoteric idea, these utopian ideas that if we can just all eat organic, really well-made food, then we will all be better Whereas you're not shying away from, hey, no, like that mac and cheese my family made growing up is beautiful. The biscuits, the gravy, you know, while not
It
the
is.
healthiest, it's important. So what, yeah, like why?
Right. Well, I mean, so, a lot of it is unpopular to say this, but a lot of our conversations around food don't take into account privilege and economics.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Um, uh, More than half. So I live in the capital city of Mississippi, right? It's the largest city in Mississippi. Granted, it's not a large city, but it's the largest one here. And more than half of my city is a USDA food desert.
Wow.
And so the people here have a really hard time getting conventional pesticide-laden, 3-month-old nasty squash, let alone organic squash that was like blessed by Carlos the Virgin.
Right.
That grew on the shady side of the mountain.
Yeah.
And definitely they can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, a third of my city is below the federal poverty level.
Wow.
And so we have a Whole Foods, but like the the Walmart gets much more play and sells much more food than the Whole Food does here.
Mm-hmm.
So, I am a tremendous fan of using the best ingredients you can afford.
Yeah.
I just absolutely think you can. Like the tomatoes I grow in my yard objectively taste better than the tomatoes that I can get at Kroger.
Yep.
But a tomato from Kroger is infinitely better than something out of a ketchup packet from McDonald's.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So let's use the best that we can possibly get. But also, in the 1800s, enslaved people in Mississippi and elsewhere throughout the country were handed leftovers. They didn't eat pork tenderloin.
Right.
Right. They were handed the head of the hog. They were handed the tail, the knuckles, the jowls, the fatty cheeks. These were all things that nobody wanted. And they gave them to the enslaved people. And the enslaved people not only turned it into something edible, they turned it into something delicious.
Yeah.
And they turned it into something that gave them the energy and the motivation to survive another day, so that 160 years later, their descendants could be amazing politicians and leaders, academics, authors. So we tend to place values on food, as in like this is good food and this is bad food.
Right.
My father passed away in 2020, and too young. His last 15 years or so of his life, he struggled with type 2 diabetes. And yes, he ate foods that he did not make wise food choices given his health profile.
Yeah.
But after he died, I inherited his journal that he wrote in every day. And one of the most heartbreaking things was to see him writing about he went to his grandson's birthday party, and he ate a piece of fried chicken, and he ate a piece of birthday cake, and he felt horrible about it. And he said, I know I was bad today. I ate bad food. It so preoccupied his mind that he wasn't able to be present for his grandchild's birthday.
Wow.
right?
Right.
And I submit that whoever did that to him did him dirty,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so yeah. So the other thing is that we have, a lot of times we see this in church and in liturgy too, that we have a practice that is divorced from its origins, and now we just do the practice rather than keep in mind the behind the origin story. I mean, like the dietary codes, right? And
Right.
in Judaism, when you're wandering around the desert, like how you treat food is probably different than how you should treat it in an air conditioned kitchen.
Yep.
In terms of health and safety. So the foods that are infamously Southern, and I'm using air quotes here for our listeners, bad.
Yeah. Right.
The chicken fried steak or the chicken and gravy or whatever. These are not, in the past, these were not foods people ate every day.
No.
Right? These were foods of celebration.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a chicken and my people are living right on the edge, if I kill the chicken, I no longer have eggs.
Yeah.
But if I keep the chicken alive, I've got an egg every day.
Yep.
And so killing a chicken was something you did rarely, and only in times of great celebration. Similar to the way that in the story of the prodigal son, the father says, my son who was lost is now found. Let's bring out the fatted calf. Let's kill the goat that we were saving for this celebration. The chicken was the same way.
Right.
When your kid graduated school, or when your daughter got married, or when the guest preacher came over, when you wanted to put forward your very best, that was when you killed and fried a chicken.
Yep.
But now, thanks to the Colonel, like, you can get a fried chicken anytime you want to.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if we reserved those things for times of celebration, we would probably all be healthier.
Yes.
But also, the reason that we brought those celebration foods forward is because they were tied to such great memories.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true in your house, but I know in my house, there are foods that we eat at Thanksgiving and no other time of the year.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
No one has green bean casserole in March.
No.
Right.
No. Right.
Right.
Or in July or August when it's,
right,
hot
seasonal.
and humid. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so those foods are tied to memory.
Yeah.
And so, but if you were moved 500 miles away from your people and you couldn't talk to them or connect to them, and you were feeling incredibly lonely, eating a slice of turkey breast and some cranberry sauce and some green bean casserole might put you in a mood to remember all the people that you are missing.
Mm-hmm.
So these unhealthy foods are often foods of celebration.
Yeah.
That were so connected to memory that they traveled with the people.
Right.
And then now their descendants rather, were more disconnected from the memories that brought the food forward. Now that's just what we eat.
Yeah. And what, was once considered leftovers or garbage is now
cuisine.
Cuisine, and pork, pork cheeks are delicious,
They are. They are. I mean, just the internet jokes about bacon. Right. And how revered it is.
Yeah.
And like, bacon was kind of trash food.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah. It was super fatty. It didn't chew well. No. Right. You can't braise it. And so, but if you slice a piece of it off and you cook it in your green beans, you can make something amazing.
Right. Yes. I just was fortunate to talk to Mark Johnson, who's the author of American Bacon, a new book that traces the American history of bacon, which is super. And like you said, it was, bacon was a frontier food, cured meat was needed, as you're traveling and you don't have refrigeration. And it was set aside later for the slaves because they needed it for the energy. It was
Yeah.
it was if you were white collar, you were above bacon, and now we have artisan bacon producers, and he even talks about bacon as a minstrel performance because what we once thought was for the slaves is now be fit for
Right.
fine dining and $20 bacon plates.
Well, you see this over and over again. I belong to a lot of food groups online, and a lot of them lament that once a poor person's food becomes popular, it gets priced out of their reach, right? So for years, chicken wings, they would practically give them away. No one wanted chicken wings because there's not much meat on them, right? And now chicken wings are expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, per pound, sometimes they're more than breasts or thighs. And so, or for years, flank steak was the secret steak, right? Like, I mean, because it was amazing and good, but it didn't have the press that ribeyes and T-bones do. And now it's this fancy steak that's very expensive.
Right.
And that same thing happened with bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we were talking, because we both love MFK Fisher in the book, in the quote,
Yes.
that it seems she writes that it seems to me that our three basic needs for food and security and love are so mixed and mingled and entwined that we cannot straightly think of one without the others. And then she ends that quote with saying that there is communion of more than our bodies when bread is broken and wine drunk.
Yeah, absolutely. Her book, How to Feed a Wolf, was one of the first times. So it was in the aftermath of World War II, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They were faced all the wartime deprivations, and good food and healthy food was hard to come by. And so she wrote a book about basically how to survive.
Right.
How to cook healthy food. We would now say how to cook healthy food on a budget. But she wrote it in such a literary and human place. I fell in love with her. And it was the first time I really saw the way that writing about food could be an act of care. I just absolutely fell in love with her. I have most of what she had published.
Right.
I adore her.
I'm curious, you made this quote, and maybe it was a passing line for you, but you said writing about food is a form of caring.
It's an act of care.
It's an act of care. Expound on that, because I think, I love to write about food, but, I've not thought of it as an act of care.
Yeah, well, So there's several things going on there, right? Like, I mean, for one, I am a writer. Like, it's my primary. I'm a pastor, but like, as you know, pastors, we write a lot.
Yeah.
But writing is how I think of my like primary interface in the world, and I really do believe that good writing begins with from the audience. I told someone the other day that for me, preaching is a form of pastoral care. Because it begins with what are the needs of the people who are going to hear this sermon.
Yep.
And thus, like, if I got invited to your church and I read one of my sermons that I preached back home, it should make no sense to your congregation.
Yep.
And so, so I start as a writer, and I say, here is this universal thing that we all do. We all eat. It's unavoidable. And there are forces in the world, such as capitalism, such as misogyny, such as the patriarchy, that seek to tell us that we're doing this thing wrong. That we don't love our children if they're drinking orange juice. Instead, they should have this other thing that we can buy from them. And so food carries with it so much shame and guilt, and we're all convinced we're doing it wrong, and it with inflation it's become so expensive. I was telling so I don't believe in guilty pleasures. There are just things I like and things I don't like. And one of the things I adore, and it's so tied into memory, is Chef Boyardee ravioli in a can.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I could come home from school and I was allowed to open a can of Chef Boyardee ravioli and eat it if I got hungry. And so I have so many memories of being 8 years old and sitting on the floor and watching cartoons and eating cold Chef Boyardee raviolis out of a bowl.
Right.
I like them better cold than warmed up. But before the pandemic, they were routinely 50 to 75 cents a can.
Yeah.
Right? And now they're like $1.25, $1.50 a can.
Yeah.
Which is like double.
Right.
And so so our foods have gotten so expensive, and so we feel guilty about cutting costs. About I saw a woman on Threads the other day almost having a breakdown because she was forced to buy generic vegetables rather than the Green Giant vegetables that she normally buys. I mean, she thought she had failed her family, and was setting them up for, I guess a life of crime or something, because she didn't give them the Green Giant vegetables. And so all food does not arrive to us naked. It brings with it all of these layers. And I just said, I recognized that one of the layers that nobody talks about is how food can be a carrier or a talisman for memory, and for the people who loved us, and that one of the expressions of love, I had ancestors that did not have the emotional intelligence to tell me how much they loved me, but they could make me a biscuit when I was hungry. Right. They could make a caramel cake on my birthday. When the sugar and the caramel was in short supply. Right. And so I think to bring all of that forward and say that this food that God made and gives us for the nourishment, like what is the grace that everyone says? Commit this food to the nourishment of our bodies and our bodies to your service, right? Like this food is prepared with love, is harvested by people who are trying to feed their own families, is prepared with love for people that they love. And I think that to name that and to put language to that in a way that people can recognize the story and then tell it themselves is an act of care.
It is. It's an act of love, it's an act of care, and then it's also a very political act.
Yes.
Which you mentioned.
The senator and I talked a little bit about that too.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And it is, it goes back to communion. It goes back to who we're breaking bread with. It goes back to who do we consider my neighbor. It considers, what these immigrant farm workers are worthy of, and the dignity and respect. And
absolutely. So I finished writing this book. The closing of the book I was writing in October of last year, when the food stamp program was being held hostage politically. And I felt that was somehow fitting, because there's never been a time when food has not been politicized.
Yeah.
The powers that be learned early on that hungry people don't resist. And there are so many examples throughout history of people who made choices they knew were bad, but they needed to do this in order to feed their family, right?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we have used the term feed our family as like shorthand for all of our livelihood, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, I took this job because I have to feed my family.
I got to put food on the table.
Got to put food on the table, right? Exactly. And so if you, my father, so my father's father, my grandfather, my father's father died when my father was 7 years old. And my father was an only child, and his mother was in her 40s at this point. And they lived 10 miles outside of a town of 500 people. And so so suddenly my father is, I'm again using air quotes, but the man of the house, right? Like
yeah.
He has a great deal of responsibility put on his shoulders at 7 years old. And so when we were born, he was somehow horrified at the idea that this might replicate itself, right?
Yeah.
And so he made sure that all of his children, there are 3 of us, I'm the oldest, all of his children could cook, that we could prepare breakfast, that we can make biscuits, that, as he told me one time, if you know how to cook an egg, you never have to be hungry. And so I believe that the act of being able to cook food is an act of political resistance, because hungry people don't fight back. If you are dependent upon other people to cook your food for you, then that means you have to pay them to cook your food, right? Which automatically makes it much more expensive.
Yep.
They are probably not going to care as much about the people who are, about you as you do, and as much about your family as you do. And that cooking and cooking good food can create margin in your life so that you have a little bit of energy, a little bit of hope, a little bit of dignity to carry forward to get you through another day. It's a way of self-actualization, of self-discovery, and it gives you an opportunity to express love for the people in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And hunger, the lack of food, is a huge, like you mentioned, in Jackson, you see it firsthand. 50%, you said, of your city is a food desert, 30% below the poverty line.
Right.
I remember Jeremy Everett, was talking to him. He runs the Baylor Collaborative on Hunger and Poverty, but he holds that, you can judge the health of a community by this, the number of people that have adequate food. Like, if food is in supply and people don't have to go hungry, you have a healthy community, because that means they are not sacrificing food to pay the bills, to, pay rent, to childcare.
Right. And if you have access to and the ability to prepare food, you have infinitely more agency, right? As fellow Mississippian Fannie Lou Hamer said, if you have 400 quarts of gumbo put up in your pantry, nobody can tell you what to do. If I am not dependent upon you to feed my family,
right,
then you don't get to decide what I do. I get to decide what I do. But hungry people are often forced to yield that decision making to people who will feed them.
Absolutely.
And whether that is the boss man or whether that's McDonald's.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And so here you and I are. It's 2026. You're a pastor. I'm a former pastor. I care deeply about the church. And so, in an era of declining budgets and declining memberships, when we're fraught with anxiety, like where might the table come in for the church today to say, hey, there's a different way?
Yeah. There is this church in one of the suburbs here. And every month when they do communion, they scrap their regular program. And for that particular Sunday, they have lunch together. Right?
Yeah.
They combine basically the communion and the regular service and their monthly potluck all as one big party,
Yeah.
if you will. By far, it's their most attended service.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who only come to that service and don't come to any of the other services. And it's not just because they're looking for a free meal. It's like they feel this deep connection there. I became Mennonite in 2007, I think it was. And I was, at the time, was running this organization for unhoused people. And I would go every Sunday. I had to raise a lot of money. And so every Sunday I'm going to this church and that church and I'm preaching. And for $1 a day, you can make sure that Carlos has a place to stay. Right.
Right.
And sign up at the back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go to these places and I always joke that I felt like the poor man's Mother Teresa, right? Like they're like, here's Hugh, he knows poor people. And like people would come up to us and come up to me and they're like, this is so godly. I wish my child would grow up to be like you and love Jesus as much as you do. And it just all felt very pedestally and fake. And then I went to Raleigh Mennonite church for the first time. And I was no big deal there, right? Because here is this couple that spent 25 years in Africa starting schools. And here's the woman who was a midwife in Zimbabwe until she retired. And here's the wealthy couple that like sold everything they had and moved to the inner city. And so it was there that I first came to understand church. That was a long setup for this point. Yeah. That I came to understand church as a support system for the rest of the week.
Right.
Not before that. I think if you had pressed me, I would have said that one of the evidences of my Christianity was that I went to church on Sunday. Like church was the work product that my Christianity produced.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And at Raleigh Mennonite, I really learned to understand that the rest of the week was my work product. And church was just a support system to enable that to happen. And so I think if we get caught up so much in the Sunday production and, and in our congregation is currently selling our building to free up resources. And to work with another congregation in town to worship in the same building. And we've only had this building like 15 years, 16 years, but there is so much emotion and connection tied up in this. There's this joke that I hear ever so often, like, how many church members does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is, change the light bulb. My grandmother donated that light bulb.
Right.
Yeah. We get so tied up in all of these external trappings. And Jesus kind of said we can do this with some bread and like a bottle of something to drink
Right.
and a table.
Yeah.
Maybe we're getting too caught up in church as the work product, instead of recognizing that really maybe church is just what facilitates our work product. Maybe we're coaches and supporters rather than gurus.
Amen.
Yeah.
For the month of, my wife and I and my kids, we currently go to a church, and we typically meet in the high school, but for the month of June, we've decided we're going to meet, or the church leadership decided they're meeting in the park. We're doing church at the park. No childcare, no Sunday school needed, so fewer volunteers.
Tell me you don't have humidity without telling me you don't have humidity.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Tell me
it sounds lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's 83 degrees yesterday, right? And like, and then, we're first couple weeks, people could bring a lunch, and then yesterday, the church provided hamburgers and hot dogs, and
oh wow,
I volunteered to cook, and my kids are getting tired and they're wanting to get home, and my wife had said we would help clean up, so I take the kids home, but people are just lingering and not rushing away. Whereas on a typical Sunday, the service is over and it's like, you beeline for the door, right? For whatever reason, right or wrong, many times you got to get your kids home to be fed because hangry kids ruin life. But I think there is something like that where it's, we're at this park where we can linger, and it's not about, we still had a typical Sunday service, but we were able, just people lingered and sat, and there was no rush. And, this park has some unhoused people, and they lingered over and were like, hey, come up, grab a plate and be fed.
Yeah. Well, and because, the food is like an invitation to linger, isn't it? Right. I mean, and I don't know if this happens at your church, but a lot of churches, there's what I talk about, the parking lot hang, where like you're talking to other people in the parking lot,
right?
And you feel kind of stupid because you're standing here with your keys in your hand.
Yeah.
But the food is an invitation to linger.
It is.
It's an invitation to, if you think about in the New Testament, in the writings of Paul and the other epistles, so many of the arguments are actually about food, right?
Yeah.
Like, are we doing this the right way? Are the right people eating? Mm-hmm. Are we, and they built entire worship services around food. The first deacons in the church, like their job was distribution of food.
Right.
For us to belong to a religion that food was so central in its forming, now it's often treated like a program to get the youth in or something.
Yeah.
Let's have pizza night to get the young people in, mm-hmm. instead of like, here is this holy act we can do together.
Right.
And recognize that each of us are deeply human and beloved by God.
Yeah. That we are welcome at the table regardless of male, female, Jew, Gentile.
Right. We're valuable and welcome at this table by virtue of our existence.
Yes. Period.
Yes.
There's no buts. There's no add-on. Yeah.
No asterisks, no caveats. Yeah. God welcomes everyone at the table.
And yet it's so hard, and churches struggle, and we are human still, and so the sin that so easily entangles us messes with us and disrupts us and malforms us, and social media, news, and yet each Sunday we are welcomed and invited back. Hopefully to remember something better.
Right.
And more beautiful.
When I'm sorry. We prize not using churchy language at Open Door. And so often I forget like the real names for things. But when I facilitate communion, right, preside over communion.
Yeah,
right. I talk a little bit about how what exactly is it that Jesus is wanting when Jesus says, when you do this, remember me? Like, what part of me are we supposed to remember?
Right.
Right. And I think about how, like, this is the end. Like, Jesus, whether your belief is that Jesus in his divine foreknowledge knows that he's about to die, or he just knows that, hey, there's a warrant out and, like,
Yeah.
they're looking for me. He knows this is the end, right? He's not going to get bail.
No. Right.
Right. This is the Last Supper, and this is my last opportunity these are my last minute instructions,
Mm-hmm.
the last chance I get. And so I like to think that, the other people at the table had seen remarkable things over the previous few years. Some of them had walked away from their careers and their families. Some of them, were now isolated from their communities. They had seen dead people come back to life.
Right.
They had seen blind people gain sight. They had seen crowds go from Hosanna to crucify him. Like, this was they had seen this huge display and had been part of what Rome saw as an insurrection movement against Rome, the most powerful government the world had ever known. They have been players in what Rome saw as this insurrection movement. And I wonder, maybe Jesus is saying, remember what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Remember what you saw.
Yeah.
When I went, something not many Mennonite pastors can say is I was in the Marines from 17 to 21.
Okay.
It was the GI Bill was the way to pay for college at the school I went to. And at the time I was not Mennonite. And so it did not present an ethical quandary for me. But as my parents took me to the airport for me to go off to boot camp, and in those pre 9/11 days, they could go to the gate with you.
Yep.
And I remember we're at the gate, and my dad, who was not a physically demonstrative person, gives me a huge hug. And in my ear, he tells me, remember who you are. You're going off to this, in essence, you're going off to this new place. Remember who you are, right? Remember what we've taught you. Remember what you've seen. Remember, you're bringing all of this with you. And when you get there, remember it, is in essence what that's saying. And so I think on that night, Jesus is kind of telling them, remember what you've seen. Remember what we did. Remember what you're capable of. And so every time we eat this meal together in the future, remember that. That's the way I'm not saying that's the gospel according to Hugh, but I carry that interpretation really close.
Right. It's a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that, because I think it is a different picture, that image of your father giving you that hug and saying, remember, like, okay, what if that is what the communion table is a hug saying, remember.
Mm-hmm.
As you go forth, the world will ask you to change. The world will invite you into something that may seem more glitzy and glamorous, but remember.
Yeah, remember.
Don't think anything left to say. It just feels like a holy moment. There are times when you do a podcast where you're like, okay, there's something holy. And we're doing audio, so it's a weird thing of how do you, in a holy moment, what do you do on a podcast?
Yeah. I mean, I think what you did is to just recognize that is what happened and what we're experiencing. Right. I think we often, one of my heroes is Mr. Rogers, right? And I love Mr. Rogers. And he has this great line where he says to the effect that anything that humans experience is mentionable. And when we mention things, we make them more manageable. And so often we're afraid to say, I just experienced this tremendous thing, or here's this thing that I'm feeling. So by naming it, I think that in and of itself is the work of God.
Yeah.
So thank you for naming it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Some fun questions to transition as we wrap up,
Sure.
Fun food questions. What's one food you refuse to eat?
So, I mean, well, part of this is hard for me because it was ingrained in me as a kid that if people give you food, you eat it.
Right. Yep.
Right. Because food is so valuable.
Right.
Both mentally and economically, like you eat it. So there's very little I would refuse to eat if you served it to me.
Yes.
Right.
Fair. Yes.
There are many things I will not order in a restaurant.
Okay. Fair. I know.
Right.
I need to probably change the wording because
Yeah. But I do not like. So, do you know what chitlins are?
Yes.
Okay.
I've never had them.
Yeah, small intestine of the hog.
Yeah. I hear they smell great when they're cooking.
Well, the word "great" is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
Yeah.
They definitely smell.
Yes.
When they're cooking, and they smell like what used to travel through them. And so when I was a little kid, we would kill hogs.
Okay.
We had hogs, and we would kill them in the fall. And the old people in my family loved chitlins because there was so much memory and everything attached to them. And as a child, my job was to hook the intestine over the water hose and flush it out, right?
Yep.
Of what was in it. It was a slimy, nasty, messy job. And cooked chitlins kind of have a texture sort of like calamari.
Okay.
Like kind of like cold calamari.
Yeah.
Right. Like calamari that's lingered on the table too long. It's kind of chewy and gummy.
Yep.
It's like that.
Okay.
I have no joy for chitlins whatsoever. And if I can die without ever having consumed another chitlin, I will be a happy man.
Great. Then on the other end of the spectrum, what's one of the best things you've ever eaten?
I actually talk about this in the book because I say that I have been fortunate enough, as someone who loves food and people who know that I love food, often when I go to a new place, people want to take me to their favorite restaurant or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I've been very fortunate. I've eaten Michelin starred meals and James Beard award-winning meals and all that. And I maintain that, for me at least, the best meal I ever had and my favorite meal are two very different meals.
Fair. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
The elderly retired farmers that lived next door to us when I was a kid functionally served as our surrogate grandparents. And we kids often ended up being entrusted to their care. And she would take round steak and beat it almost paper thin, dredge it in flour, fry it in fat, and then make a thick brown gravy. Put the steak in the gravy, put the lid on the skillet, 350 degrees for 3 hours. Okay?
Yeah.
And it would cook down until it would just shred when you would pick it up with a fork.
Yeah. And
we would eat that over rice or mashed potatoes. And my mouth is watering as I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
And I maintain that if I were ever on death row and were granted one last meal, that I would want that to be my meal. Steak and gravy over mashed potatoes.
Well, you just answered my final question, because my final question is, there's a conversation among chefs about last meals, as in if you knew you only had one more meal left to enjoy, What would it be? And so you've already
Yeah. No, and I actually do say in my
right.
book
Yeah.
that
Yep.
that if I had a last meal, it would be steak and gravy. But I honestly think that if I were to know that something was my last meal, I would be much more interested in who I'm sharing it with
Yep.
than what's on the menu.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because it's the people who make the meal.
It is. It is. I've never dined alone at a fancy restaurant.
Mm.
I think it might be an interesting experiment per se, just to, and then, maybe dine at a restaurant like that and then go back with, my wife,
Mm-hmm.
and have juxtapose the two experiences and see which.
The French chef Jacques Pepin, he's written like 30 cookbooks, and
right.
And he says, and he's developed thousands of recipes, and he said that writing a recipe is really about capturing a moment in time, like a particular, like, so that the 50th time you cook it, it tastes like it did the first time you cooked it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to capture this taste. He said, but it's an impossible situation because every meal is in different circumstances, right?
Yep.
And so the time that you eat the meatloaf with your grandmother is different than the time you eat the meatloaf, after the funeral, right? Like and so, so it's sort of impossible, and yet it's an attempt to freeze in time that moment and taste.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. They do. And you remember the moment. You may not always remember what you had. Because I'm just recalling, right before we moved to Flagstaff, we were in Park City, living just outside of Park City. We went back to our favorite restaurant one last time. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember, our server was a server that I had worked with at the restaurant I had worked with. The hostess had worked at the restaurant. So it was,
mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what we ate that night, but I remember Brian and Ryan and their care for us during that night. And him bringing over at the end of a meal a shot of green chartreuse, because he says, Andrew, at Silver we did Fernet, here we do chartreuse. So as a thank you and a goodbye,
mm-hmm.
Here is this.
Yeah.
But yeah, people, that moment lives and is etched, not because of what we were served or what we ate, but because of what it represented.
Right. The other night, in fact, so my birthday was the 5th. And
happy birthday.
Thank you. And the night before, I actually made steak and gravy and rice for dinner.
Yeah.
I do most of the cooking in my house. And so it was a treat to myself, right? Like this favorite meal. And my wife asked, does this taste as good as Monty's? Monty was the lady who made it for me as a child. Does it taste as good as Monty's does? And I said, sometimes I really wonder if Monty's tasted as good as Monty's does.
Yeah.
Right. Did. Like in my head, it's all so tied together, the love and the comfort and the joy and as well as the taste of the food.
Yeah.
And I can't replicate that here.
Nope.
It's good.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, and every time I cook it is an attempt to recreate and to remember everything that went into that country farmhouse kitchen 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it's not a nostalgia, it's not a yearning, but there is a remembrance. And I think there's a key difference.
Right.
As we think about life, of nostalgia versus remembering, because we are called to be remembrant or to remember. We're not called to be nostalgic.
I had a really good friend who, when I lived in North Carolina, that worked with formerly incarcerated people. And because they would get out of prison and were kind of just thrown to the wolves, right? Yeah. And so a fairly large number of them would reoffend because they didn't know what else to do.
Yep.
And he had a line that he would say that the past is a useful reference point and a horrible resting place. And I really like that, right?
Yeah.
Like this idea that the things that came before us, these are reference points.
Right.
And we should remember them and use them to judge like the future. But it's a horrible place to hang out. When I was working with unhoused people, we would see people all the time, constantly coming through the doors. And some of them, you just knew they were newly unhoused and you just knew they were going to be okay. Right. And some of them you knew like they are not.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we came to, and the staff, we would often talk like, why, how do we know this? Like how, and those who were focused on what their past had been like, the Al Bundy skit on Married with Children about like the football champion of Oak High School or whatever.
Right.
The old men you meet who like all they can talk about was their war experience. People whose whole concept is based in the past, versus the people who would tell us about, I want to go back to school so that I can, be with my grandchildren, so that I can get a house where my grandchildren can swing on the swing in the front yard. Those people almost were always okay.
Yeah.
They just needed time.
Yep.
And so, yeah, the past is a useful reference point and a horrible resting place.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew.
Well, Hugh, this has been delightful, and I think we could go on probably for many hours to unpack food and memories,
yes.
But for the sake of time and maybe listenership, if people are curious more about you and want to know more about your work, where could they find?
The easiest way to keep up with me is hughhollowell.org.
Okay.
I have links to all the various projects that I'm constantly working on. And I have a podcast of my own. It's kind of weird. I just tell stories. It's a storytelling podcast. You might have caught on in the last hour or so that I like to tell stories.
Yes.
And so I tell a 3 to 5 minute story twice a month on a podcast I call the Hughes Cast. There's links to that on the website as well. I have a newsletter that comes out every week where I try to provide compelling evidence that the world is actually a beautiful place, despite what you might have heard on the news last night.
Okay.
And links to all of that is on the website.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to include those in the show notes. And
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Yeah. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing it with others. Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Biggest Table, where we explore what it means to be transformed by God's love around the table and through food. Until next time, bye.